Hey everybody, Shiv here, and today we're going to be talking about the CV rework. Mostly 6 things that wargaming is kind of failing on, and 6 ways that they can possibly fix this. Alright, so I went into the CV rework with a very open mind and kind of a lot of happy expectations because, CVs have been kind of a powerhouse, but, mishandled and most people kind of play it poorly. And I was hoping the CB rework would kind of fix this. Well, what we've seen in the beta, which I want to iterate here, what we see in the beta is not what live is going to be. This has been stated several times by people like Sub Octavian and so on. But what we've been seeing is a very scary picture. All right. So in the rework, what we've seen is planes traveling at basically twice the speed of sound, making torpedo runs almost at the speed of sound, ineffective AA, that the CV player could easily just duck around, use terrain to a great advantage, and yeah, it's just been, it's been one of those experiences that it's kind of like the first time somebody saw an atomic bomb and then was told, we're going to base our entire defense strategy around this horrific weapon. Yeah, it's scary. But, again, the rework is not complete. Will some of the balancing aspect for this rework take place live? Most likely, yes. Because there's only so much information you can get from a limited player pool. And that's going to suck for a lot of us. And I'm going to tell you this right now. If that is a problem for you, I highly recommend that when the rework comes out, you play ranked. There will be no CVs in ranked, all right, because of the whole odd tier thing. All right, but with that said, there are 6 basic issues that I think are causing a lot of problems when it comes to counterplay options in the game. Number 1 is, well, to be perfectly honest, Wargaming gutted range. They gutted the damage from upgrades and commander skills. They completely gutted that. So what we end up getting are ships like, say, the Worcester are no longer going to be able to reach out and touch something at, say, like 8.6 here. All right, they won't be able to do that. Instead, they're going to have to be capped into 5 kilometers at max range, and that 5 kilometers is only going to be this flat cloud, the thing that you can completely avoid and negate. All right, that is a huge problem. All right, so by gutting this out, what they've effectively done is they've turned AA for the most part as a self-only defense system. All right, the days where ships like the Worcester and the Minotaur, the DM, could provide cover for the rest of the fleet if they were relatively close are gone, are absolutely gone. As it stands now, I have to hug a Yamato or a Musashi in order to give it any sort of protection. That's just not fun. That's not good at all. I think that's actually probably one of the most negative aspects of it. It completely takes a class designed to counter something, or a subclass designed to counter something, and relegates it to obscurity and ineffectiveness. That's not good. Absolutely not good. But again, remember, not everything is finalized in the rework, so those things could possibly change. Now, the next thing I have a problem with, and I mentioned this in the intro of this, was the time compression for the planes. As it stands right now, planes are moving at about 5x, along with everything else in the game. So 248 knots becomes 1.8 Mach very, very quickly. And, to figure this out, just seriously, go watch any video, all right, and watch as it comes into target, and take the time it takes to go from point A to point B, and then calculate, and you will find out how fast these planes are actually going. It's scary. But the speed and maneuverability that these planes are having is playing havoc with almost everything else in the game in terms of balancing and counterplay, all right? They're just traveling way too fast. All right, next up is the Aura system. Number 3, the Aura system. Okay, so the Aura system used to stack in the RTS version. So your long range, medium, and up close would all be firing at the same time if, say, like dive bombers were about to drop on you. This allowed for a greater intensity the closer the planes got, which historically would be accurate. But instead, they've opted to separate these, and this creates a lot of issues here. Like, some auras are only like 0.2 km big, which allows for planes to just zip right through that. Again, talking about the time compression and speed of the planes, they could literally just bypass a lot of the auras as if it's nothing. So yeah, that's been a huge problem. The next one, number 4, is the track time for the AA. So with this new flak system, what ends up happening is, okay, plane comes into range, check. Spot on plane, check. Lead on plane, check. Fire. Now this all happens in like a brief amount of time. The time in between when it has to recheck and re-lead is where some issues are coming into play. Most notably, again, the time compression is making a lot of this flak appear in places where the planes were previously, or just like not there at all. It almost feels like your AA gunners are like on drugs and everything is in a time dilation and very, very slowed for them, but everything in reality isn't. So yeah, the AA is a little lagging behind because of that, and it's definitely something that they can easily fix. Whether or not they will, it's up to them. Alright, the 5th problem is the defensive fire AA consumable. So now we're living in a world with unlimited planes, alright? But yet, defensive fire AA is still a limited use consumable. This seems a little, it's very frustrating. Even more so when you consider that when you use defensive fire AA, if the CV is paying attention, he could simply return his planes and completely waste your defensive fire AA. Alright? It's like, oh, well, hey, I'm going to return them back. They're going to zoom out of that zone that you had them in very, very quickly. And before they even get back to the CV, I'm able to have another wing of different type of attack planes up and running on an instant. That is not good. That is extremely infuriating. Now, this isn't the only time, CVs have been able to bait out defensive fire AA. It was actually a core strategy for a lot of the top-level CV players, okay? It was. But to be able to do it in one keystroke is very frustrating and kind of exploitive, to be perfectly honest. And again, we're talking about an environment with unlimited planes. All right, the CV will be able to have planes that it can launch from start to finish of a match. Can't say the same thing about the counter option, which kind of makes it less of a counter, to be perfectly honest. And the 6th and final thing is AA turret health. All right, we all know that when you're using AA, one of the biggest problems is HE shells. As you can see here, we're dropping HE shells on this DM, and look at that. That's one. And we're about to get like another one here in a second. Yep, there's another. Gonna get 2 more here. You see how relatively easy it is to just knock out these AA guns. Well, this is kind of problematic. And people have been saying, hey, you're allowing them to have unlimited planes, but I can't keep my guns? What the hell? So people have been asking for some changes on that too. And to be perfectly honest, I think this is a relatively healthy thing. Now, Wargaming in their defense has said, yes, we understand that this is somewhat of an issue. We are planning to double the health of the AA turrets. Well, I think that is a really good change. I still think it's not going to be enough to be overly effective, and there's a much simpler solution that they could implement. Alright, speaking of solutions and implementations, let's get on to the things that they could do to make this better. Alright? Everybody loves things that are better. Alright, so the first thing you're going to have to take a look at is the time compression. All right, that's going to have to get reduced. I think that's going to be the biggest one that has to be looked into. Right now, like I said, it's at 5x. I think Wargaming needs to experiment around with 3.5 and 4x, somewhere in those ranges, to find probably an effective time on that. And the reason why I say that is because with slower time compression, they'll spend more time in those zones and thus be able to eat up more of that damage. They'll also not be as nimble or maneuverable, okay? Which again will allow AA to do its job. All right, keep that in mind. Okay, AA range as well as some of the damage amounts are going to have to be adjusted. I'm sorry, you're just going to have to do it. You took away 40% of AA range. You also took away a potential 145% of AA damage, including manual secondaries. You took that away and gave us very little to replace it with. That's no me gusta. And again, in a world full of planes, not having the tools to be able to deal with it kind of puts CVs as the apex predator, all right? It is literally Jaws at this point. So I'm not saying that they need to restore the 40%, restore the 145. Obviously, times change. We're going to have to move and change into different things. But I think a universal increase of 25% for all AA guns across the board would be appropriate. I also think that for certain nations, those amounts need to be increased more, i.e. American should have the best AA guns because that was our claim to fame in World War II. The one thing that we did best was shoot planes out of the sky. Hell, one of the youngest people who ever took part in World War II, a 12-year-old, was an AA loader. There's a really good movie with Ricky Schroeder playing him. You guys should check that out. It's a great movie. Alright, so yeah, AA range. The third thing is going to be the auras. Overlap is going to have to come back. I'm sorry, it just is going to have to come back. And there's actually some basis in historical fact, technology, and so on that actually makes this viable. And that would be proximity fuses were tested on the Cleveland in 1942 and then later used in the battles of the Pacific as well as the invasion of Sicily. So they were in use in World War II. And not only just ships from 42 on had them, but a lot of the rework ships got them as well. So when they went in for refit, they got retooled up and were able to use these shells. So those Hull Cs on, say, like DDs and, so on for other ships would have this available to them. All right? So it would allow for some overlap. Doesn't have to be, 100% stack, but it's definitely something that you could use. All right, so number 4, the zone focus. I'm sorry, the zone focus is ugly, feels like crap. And I would much rather the interface didn't exist. I also find that the amounts that are given to be kind of meh, and it's something that I think Wargaming could do some individual tweaking based on factions of, and I think that'd be a good option. Personally, I'd like to see the tilde key just change the state on the compass elements instead of it bringing up that UI interface that blocks our vision. Do that'd be fine. Those of us who've played, spaceflight sims for years in the 90s will definitely understand this concept. It's the same thing that they used during X-Wing and TIE Fighter and the Wing Commander series, so it should be relatively simple. The next thing that they're going to have to definitely do something about is going to be defensive fire AA. Alright, it needs to be overhauled. And what I mean by overhauled, I mean change to basically damage control party, Unlimited usage, it's a consumable. It can't, you can bait it out, yeah, but you can't, completely negate it, which I think would be a much healthier solution. And because you have an option here where you can mess around with faction specifics, it's like, hey, we may give you weaker AA here, but we're going to increase your DFAA there, maybe change the durations, etc., the cooldown, whatever. I mean, that's a room where you can play around with some interesting balancing tweaks, all right? And I think Wargaming, you really need to look into that. And the sixth and final thing is going back to the AA turret health. I think probably the best solution for this, and you may not agree, is going to be changing it. All right? And what I mean by changing it, I mean, as it stands right now, twice the amount of health is not going to do shit. All right? Absolutely is not going to do anything. All right, I'm sorry, Sub-Octavian. I know this is something you put out there, and I don't know who came up with this idea to begin with, but it would be absolutely ineffective. 100% ineffective. I don't think it's a good idea. So, yeah. What you could change it to is one of two different things, and I'd like you guys to actually keep both of these in mind, because they're both very viable options. Number 1, AA can't be taken out permanently, but instead just kind of knocked out for a limited amount of time. Okay, this is actually something that was available during the alpha. HE used to not do nearly as much damage as it does now. It did still start fires, but what it did to battleships was basically give them a shaken state that would lengthen the amount of time it took to reload. Let me tell you, there was nothing funnier than forcing a Yamato to have minute-plus long reloads with a DM. It was hilariously fun. Hilariously fun. Oh god, it was broken. But that would actually be kind of a good thing. He was like, okay, these got knocked out. They'll be back up in 30 seconds. Bada bing, bada boom, let's go. Another option you could do is still give us the double health, which, again, I think is a fair start point. But once they get knocked out, you could allow them to be all brought back online by using the damage control party. Okay? Makes sense. Why not? It's a simple solution. All right? It is a very simple solution and would solve a lot of these problems. All right? It would be a very effective thing. So, yeah, that's my 6 problems and my 6 solutions. Obviously, there's probably a ton more, like the aiming reticles for, like, the dive bomber and the torpedo bombers. Those definitely need some work and, you know, how they guide and so on and so on. But those are all things that are kind of quality of life, not so much game-breaking elements. And in all honesty, this video was meant to be focused on the anti-air aspect of it. So, yeah. Personally, I think wargaming could definitely make the rework a thing. I think it could be a positive experience. But without the proper counterplay to the game, I think it's going to be an absolute travesty. Okay? I think it's going to be an absolute travesty. And now for the first month, like I said before, it's going to be rough out there, guys. Play rank. It's going to be rough. And wargaming is going to take a lot of heat from it because they've openly said, look, we're going to have to do some of this balancing and testing live. All right? This has not gone over well with them before. Everybody remembers the World of Tank artillery fiasco of 2017. And everybody's afraid that's going to happen. But what people seem to forget is wargaming apologized for that shit and ended up giving a lot of swag out to people who suffered through it. Just for, you know, try to have customer retention. So I honestly think we could be seeing something like that here again. So while it's going to suck, yeah, at least we'll get paid because it sucks later on. So, and if it ends up coming up with a better product, I think it's going to be a much better thing. So that's going to be all for this video. I hope you guys like it. If you have any comments, leave them down below. Let me know your thoughts. What could they do better? Did you like this video? Do you think I need to shut the fuck up? Take your pick. All right, let's have these discussions. Anyway, this is Shiv saying thank you very much for watching. Till next time, stay safe, have fun. May our Jesus bless you. Peace.